Brid Smith.
I suppose just to give a perspective of somebody who's brand new to this House and the procedures and the atmosphere in it, it's been painfully slow 40 days, as the 40 days that Richard Boyd Barrett earlier alluded to. But what's in my mind all the time is how dreadful this looks to the public out there. And the public who has been already said by many deputies here, who are suffering from the housing crisis, disabilities, urgency in waiting on trolleys for health care, and indeed people like the Lewis strikers and those who are voting tonight in Tesco's for taking industrial action if they don't get their pay rise. How frustrating it must be to think about the maths of what's going on here. For 40 days we have been highly paid, both on salary and on expenses, some of us higher than others, to do nothing, because we've done nothing. And all of that resources, all of that finance that's wasted, while many in this House would criticise Lewis drivers and others for taking strike action to improve their conditions. But one of the repeated mantras that keeps coming back to me and jarring in my brain is this idea that we're all trying to fulfil the ambitions of this country and that we have to put the interests of the country first. I mean, look at the diversity of political opinion in this House. The interests of this country are not shared by everybody in this country. When Enda Kenny and Micheál Martin talk about the interests of this country first, they mean certain interests, and I mean different interests. There are competing interests. And just to give the example of the question of homelessness and housing, the Minister for Housing, who has just spoken, has repeatedly driven the interests of the private market, the developers, the builders, on the question of dealing with the housing crisis. We here are interested in ending the housing crisis and beginning the provision of tens of thousands of social housing, which is the only way of addressing it. Driving it into the private market, to private landlords, to developers, is actually ruining any possibility of ending it. The last thing I want to talk about is the water charges. Over 90 deputies were elected, very clearly those to my left, stealing the clothes of the left and saying that they would do something about the water charges. Over 90 deputies were elected to do something about it, and nothing has been done. At least can we get our act together and do something about the issues that we do have in common. People stood outside the Taoiseach's office today demanding repeal the 8th from many parties. Let's get our act together and do something about that. But I do detect from Deputy Callaghan's comments, his last comment, is that we will have white smoke soon and we will have some arrangement whereby a government will be put in place. But I do think it's outrageous that we're taking another week off and we're getting no business done in this House. And I want to say to the public out there, when we get around, and this side of the House are working closely with the Right to Change and the Right to Water TDs in this House to put together a joint motion on water charges and other issues, and we will work with others who are interested in doing this. I'm calling on the public to get outside the gates and support us on this. The public that voted for us, the people, the real people who are fighting back to try and change their lives in this country and whom we're concerned about. There are competing interests in this country, and they're the interests of the rich versus the rest of us. We represent the rest of us.
Thank you, Deputy. The next speaker,